Today we are revisiting the bitter lesson and exploring whether we are now in the era of vertical AI models. Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. I noticed this really interesting story yesterday where Intercom announced that their new dedicated customer service-focused model, Finn, had achieved something very significant. CEO Ewan McCabe called it objectively the highest performing, fastest, and cheapest model for customer service, beating the very best models in the industry, including GPT 5.4 and Opus 4.5. Now, it has been a persistent question in AI about how much custom models would matter. You might remember way back in the immediate post-ChatGPT fever, a number of companies figured, well, since we have such unique proprietary data, training our own model on that data surely will outperform. Maybe the best known of those efforts was Bloomberg GPT, which they called a 50 billion parameter large language model purpose-built from scratch for finance. Now, it turned out that in practice, that model got absolutely smoked by the general models, reminding everyone once again of the bitter lesson. The bitter lesson is a very famous essay from computer scientist Rich Sutton from back in 2019. He writes, "The biggest lesson that can be read from 70 years of AI research is that general methods that leverage computation are ultimately the most effective and by a large margin." He gave as one of his first examples computer chess. He says in computer chess, the methods that defeated the world champion Kasparov in 1997 were based on massive deep search. At the time, this was looked upon with dismay by the majority of computer chess researchers who had pursued methods that leveraged human understanding of the special structure of chess. When a simpler, search-based approach with special hardware and software proved vastly more effective, these human knowledge-based chess researchers were not good losers. They said that brute force search may have won this time, but it was not a general strategy. And anyway, it was not how people played chess. These researchers wanted methods based on human input to win, and were disappointed when they did not. So basically what this essay is arguing is that throughout AI history, and as a reminder, because this often surprises people, AI as a field, at least as a named field, is older than computer science. If you go back to the 50s and look at the laboratories at places like MIT, there were already back then artificial intelligence labs, but the idea of computer science as a field wouldn't come until a little bit later. In any case, what the bitter lesson is arguing is that throughout AI history, researchers have tried two basic approaches. The first is encoding human knowledge and clever tricks into systems, essentially trying to teach computers how humans think. The second is giving computers massive amounts of data and compute and letting them figure things out on their own through search and learning. The bitter lesson is that the second approach wins every single time. It's bitter because it's a blow to human ego. Researchers spend years crafting elegant, domain-specific solutions, encoding chess strategy or linguistic rules or visual perception models. And then a brute force method powered by more compute just steamrolls all that careful work. Now we had that example from chess, but that example repeated across Go, speech recognition, computer vision, and now language. The systems that scale with more computation always eventually beat the systems built on human designed shortcuts. And so taking the bitter lesson and applying it to LLMs kind of explains why Bloomberg's highly specialized model ultimately got beat by much bigger and more computationally intensive models. And yet, coming into 2026, there was an interesting question, specifically of whether a specific type of data might actually change this equation. That data that people were interested in is last mile usage data, basically user interaction data at the very edge of the experience. And the specific place where many were watching this was around AI coding. The question was whether a company like Cursor could ultimately have some advantage in their own proprietary model because they had such a tremendous amount of experiential data around the actual interaction point. Now, it wasn't really so much a question of whether that data is valuable. Obviously it is. But there's a difference in it being valuable for product design versus model design. Inevitably, that data is extremely useful in figuring out the right products or the right harnesses for models. That was never in question. What was a question is whether all that information could actually change the destiny of customized vertical models. Latent Space wrote about this last year in November in their piece titled The Agent Labs Thesis. The point that Swix and Latent Space were making was that if it is the case that we are close to hitting the limits of pre-training data, that perhaps shifts the future of model performance to post-training. The Agent Labs thesis asked, can post-training make up the gap between the best open models and the best frontier models? And how long until they start exceeding? In other words, the tweak here is that a company like Cursor isn't training a model from scratch. They are taking the best available open weights models that are out there, which are admittedly a little bit behind the state of the art, and adding in this post-training process with the idea of actually performing better in a specific domain than the general state-of-the-art model can. Now, Cursor placed a pretty high importance on this. The company had said explicitly that they needed to train state-of-the-art coding models to keep up with competitors, which some reports suggested was a financial imperative, with Cursor burning too much money reselling API access to OpenAI and Anthropic. Now, earlier this month, we got the release of their Composer 2 model. The model was in the same ballpark as GPT 5.4 and actually beat Opus 4.6 on coding benchmarks while being much cheaper to run, meaning, of course, that it fit Cursor's needs extremely well. However, an ex-user called Flynn triggered a controversy, revealing that Composer 2 was just, and boy is this just doing a lot of heavy lifting, Kimi K2.5 with some extra reinforcement learning applied. Cursor themselves did not deny this. Dev Relations rep Lee Robinson commented, "Yep, Composer 2 started from an open source base. We will do full pre-training in the future. Only a quarter of the compute spent on the final model came from the base, the rest is from our training. This is why evals are very different." Now, some amount of the controversy was about Cursor, in the eyes of some, failing to disclose their use of an open source base model, but others seemed genuinely dismissive of the practice. As Flynn had done, they wrote off the model as quote-unquote just Kimi K2.5 without a second thought. Others thought, though, that maybe something important was going on here. Leet LLM writes, "As someone who basically lives in Opus 4.6, seeing an open-weight Kimi 2.5 fine-tune actually beat it on coding benchmarks is wild." If Composer 2 could really perform that well, Cursor seemed to have demonstrated that reinforcement learning on a quality dataset can actually go quite a long way, vaulting an adequate base model into the top tier. This, of course, in some ways seems to run counter to the bitter lesson, but if it's correct, would suggest that there's a lot of fertile ground for training models around particular verticals. Which gets us to the announcement yesterday from Intercom. Intercom's chief product officer Paul Adams tweets, "We have a very significant announcement here that will change how we think about the AI landscape. We have built a brand new model for Fin called Apex, which has a higher resolution rate, fewer hallucinations, and is far cheaper than any other model provided by any other company in the world, and it isn't close. This is an incredibly hard thing to achieve and is only possible with the domain-specific proprietary evals from our billions of human and agent customer service interaction data points. We also have a flywheel here where we will continue to get better at the edges." This is, you might recognize, exactly what we were talking about in my 2026 predictions when we talked about the lab loop and the importance of this last mile usage data. Paul continues, "So what does this mean? It means that vertical models can and will outperform general models. It means that many successful companies in the future will need to be full stack, app layer, AI layer, and model layer. And critically, as it becomes much easier to copy and clone at the app layer, durable differentiation will move down the stack and ultimately to the model layer." Now, this got a ton of chatter. BNAFOG writes, "The story isn't that Apex beat frontier models. It's that domain-specific post-training closed the gap this fast. Any vertical SaaS with enough labeled interaction data is sitting on an untapped fine-tuning asset. The infrastructure moat is eroding faster than most realize." Abhijit, who's on the board of Intercom but does new products at OpenAI, writes, "Model quality depends a lot on judgment, and that judgment lives in proprietary evals, real-world usage, and fast feedback loops, being close to the work. This creates all kinds of opportunities for companies that are willing to think big and bet on themselves." Now, while he doesn't seem worried for his main employer, OpenAI, the implications for them is certainly where many people's heads went. Theo Blocher writes, "Very cool feat from Intercom, though reading this makes me wonder what value the frontier lab companies actually deliver long-term. If every industry, Cursor for coding, now Fin for CS, can build better and cheaper specialized models from open source bases." And interestingly, this wasn't the only story around these themes. Decagon co-founder Ashwin Srinivas writes, "Over 80% of model traffic at Decagon now runs on models we've trained in-house, structured as a network of specialized models handling different parts of the interaction." Now, this is a little bit different because there is actually an architectural change here. In their announcement post, they write, "Instead of relying on a single model, we built a network of specialized models, each responsible for a specific part of the interaction: detection, orchestration, response generation, and evaluation. That separation lets us optimize each layer independently and drive better speed and quality across the system." Regardless, though, the point is that here you have another company that is shifting off reliance on the major closed foundation models and towards models that they've trained, at least in part, themselves. Shakar says, "I think this is a trend we'll see going forward. The reliance on general-purpose frontier models will hit a wall for domain-specific tasks. Custom post-training pipelines will be the way forward." Clem DeLange from Hugging Face agrees, writing, After Pinterest, Airbnb, Notion, Cursor, today it's Ewan and Intercom publicly sharing that they're finding it better, cheaper, faster to use and train open models themselves rather than use APIs for many tasks. And hundreds of other companies are doing the same without sharing. Ultimately, I believe the majority of AI workflows will be in-house based on open source versus API. It took much more time than we anticipated, but it's happening now. Now, obviously, if this is the case, there are significant business model implications. Adriana Sabato writes, "The API tax is starting to look like the cloud markup of 10 years ago. Once teams realize they can run fine-tuned open models for a fraction of the cost, the switch becomes obvious." Ewan from Intercom agrees that this is the beginning of something bigger, writing a companion post called "The Age of Vertical Models is Here." He reinforces that the model just is better across numerous dimensions. It has a 2.8% higher resolution rate, but he writes, importantly, it's also dramatically faster, has fewer hallucinations, in fact a 65% reduction in hallucinations, and is far cheaper than all other available models. In his post, Ewan referenced the recent interview with Andrej Karpathy, where Karpathy said, "I do think we should expect more speciation in the intelligences. The animal kingdom is extremely diverse in the brains that exist. And there's lots of different niches of nature. And I think we should be able to see more speciation. And you don't need this oracle that knows everything, you kind of speciate it, and then you put it on a specific task. And we should be seeing some of that because you should be able to have much smaller models that still have the cognitive core." From there, Ewan picks up, "The frontier labs still have the very best models, but the open weight models are not that far behind. So it's not hard to see pre-training as a commodity of sorts. Where we think the frontier will move next is to post-training." Karpathy's prediction is exactly what we're seeing with Apex and Cursor's Composer 2, and what we're going to see significantly going forward. As such, the labs are in an interesting position where on one hand, the horizontal general-purpose models are actually overserving the market for specific use cases, e.g. their models are more generally intelligent than is needed for customer service, and on the other hand, the open-weight models are more than good enough where high-quality domain-specific post-training can make the resulting model superior at the special-purpose jobs and in the way that matters to that particular job. Personally, I'm still very bullish on the labs. We remain very heavy customers of Anthropic. Yet classic disruption is now at their door. The only way out is to disrupt themselves by building cheaper specialized models too. And the only way to do that is to acquire the evals, or the companies with the evals, needed for that specific task. Which means there will be some interesting data partnerships or M&A consolidation, and you're going to see some hyper-specific model providers who go it alone and compete with the labs head-to-head. Likely all of the above. Now, going back to the bitter lesson, it kind of feels at first glance like this would run counter to that, right? That in the long run, the sheer additional volume of computational data should beat out the specialized knowledge and data of the edge providers. Except the bitter lesson isn't just about the amount of data. It's about brute force data and compute as opposed to human knowledge. But we're not exactly talking about human knowledge here. Instead, we're talking about experience. The data that a Cursor has, or an Intercom has, is not the data of some human expert. Instead, it's millions of interactions which show how things actually happen in the real world. It turns out that Richard Sutton himself actually discussed this very thing as an example of the next phase of the bitter lesson on the Dwarkesh podcast last year.
Will they reach the limits of the data and be superseded by things that can get more data just from experience rather than from people? In some ways, it's a classic case of the bitter lesson. With the more human knowledge we put into the large language models, the better they can do. And so it feels good. And yet, I in particular expect there to be systems that can learn from experience, and those could well perform much, much better and be much more scalable, in which case it will be another instance of the bitter lesson that the things that used human knowledge were eventually superseded by things that just trained from experience and computation.
Putting it simply, this new model Apex, Composer 2, are post-trained from experience, exactly as Sutton said. Now, this might feel like an inside baseball kind of story, but I think that the implications could be massive in terms of how the whole industry evolves. One thing I don't think that this means is that every company that has any sort of customer data is all of a sudden going to be successfully able to spin their own model. There are ultimately not that many people who are good at doing post-training, and so I don't think that we're going to see this massive fragmentation of vertical models. But you better believe that these results are encouraging enough that many, many more companies who do have this type of data and the post-training talent or the ability to get it are going to be doing some experimenting in this area. It's something we will continue to watch and explore, but for now, that's going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Appreciate you listening or watching as always, and until next time, peace.